Thank you to both SAVE and Value Analysis Canada. It's such a pleasure to be here. And what I'd like to do this morning is to maybe step back and take a little bit of a different look at what you folks are passionate about and what you do every day. Because as we look at value analysis, value engineering, I know that many of you are able to immerse yourself into existing problems. You're able to immerse yourself into figuring out how can we continue to move ahead. And what I'd like to do is put another perspective on what you do every day, and that is leadership. Value engineering, to me, is at the core of leadership. It's about understanding that change is what drives us. It's about understanding that in the world we live in, disruption will happen, and that value engineering can be the key to how we can all continue to lead. It's also about bringing together people, bringing together teams, bringing together companies. It's about collaboration. So we have setting the course, doing things right for your organization and other organizations, collaboration, bringing together teams. That's leadership. Value engineering is leadership. And today I'll talk about leadership in the face of disruption. For those of you who aren't familiar with General Electric, we are a digital industrial company. We have 8 major industries that we serve, everything from the aviation industry through transportation and locomotives and mining equipment, power generation, heavy infrastructure around water and distributed power, centralized power, renewable energy, being able to work now in smart cities. We are a very, very diverse company. A company that has been able to play in many markets, a company that has been able to fortunately lead many markets. But we can never stand still. And in fact, in today's world, there are so many disruptors going on. There are disruptors from new types of regulations, being able to change our landscape in just a moment's notice. There are new players emerging, whether it's the maker movement, looking at new ways of collaborating, new types of services, or very large, wonderful companies who are going into new industries and introducing new products. Of course, technology is always changing, which in and of itself is going to lead to disruption. And finally, new types of business models, taking traditional industries and turning them upside down. Any company today, any organization, any entity always has to be on the look for disruption. It no longer is good enough to be first in your field or to have major customers. Disruption, it is around us every day. And sometimes we get so caught up in what we do, we don't think about it. We get so caught up in working on our products, our services, that it's very, very hard to look around and say, is disruption happening? And more importantly, it's hard to say, should we be leading this disruption? Should we be the ones who are making everyone else nervous? Again, what I will contend is that value engineering can be at the core of this. Value engineering can set that mindset of being the leader, of being the disruptor, of being the one that everyone else looks at. So when you think about how do you build that mindset, how do you make a disruptive industrial company? Well, at the heart of it is innovation and entrepreneurship. Again, those of you who may be familiar with the company that I work with, very large company located in over 70 different countries. We have 330,000 employees working in 8 different major industries. How can you be entrepreneurial? How can you be the ones that are thinking about being scrappy and starting up? Well, it's around understanding at the core that it's about learning. It's then taking learning and understanding how to operationalize it. And then most importantly, understanding where that value is. Why we are all here today. That's what entrepreneurship is about. Entrepreneurship is about getting that idea, understanding, bringing in those we need to work with, and then saying, how can we change? You know, change is such an interesting word. Everyone loves change until they have to change, right? Everyone says, oh, change is great. Change is going to drive us. Then when you're asked to change, you're like, oh, we're good. We got our processes set. You need to develop that mindset. That's why for me, value analysis, value engineering is as much about the mindset and leadership as anything else. So it's about developing talent. It's about understanding how are we going to move, whether we're a large company, a small company. What do our products need to look like? Can we move faster if we have things like platforms, things that are common and we really understand, but now we're able to move quickly. It's about understanding not only the collaboration with people, and collaboration, I'm going to use that word a lot today, because collaboration is hard. Collaboration does not equal connectivity. Many of us say we're connected, right? We're in the same chat group. We're in something called Slack. My son just taught me that one. We're in a Slack group. We're able to share some things. But can you truly work together? That's very, very hard. It's hard to collaborate. And putting frameworks like value analysis help bring people to common goals. It helps drive that innovation and entrepreneurship. It helps us build these ecosystems, and by ecosystems, I mean public, private, academic, consortia, industry. How do we bring us together to drive innovation and entrepreneurship using value engineering, value analysis as a core? It can unite us. It can make us all be leaders in a new and different way. Today, very few products that are standalone are making it in the industry today. Today is a system-focused world. Everything goes into a system, builds a system, and again, by understanding value engineering, we can constantly drive disruption in these very complex, very intricate, very interconnected world. In fact, you can see that statistic I have up there. When you look at the changes, most of the changes are actually happening on just a small number of platforms. Now, the changes are dramatic. These new business models, new type of applications, new types of working with each other, but the core is still there. Our systems, our controls, our platforms, our mechanics, our electrical, our civil engineering, it's all still there. And if we use that as an anchor, and then use value engineering, functional analysis, understanding disruption, we can bring us together and drive new types of change. It's about leadership. Now, when I think about how to get teams rallied around value engineering, how to start them thinking, I use this format. Now, this is my most simple chart. We got triangles, we got circles. Christine's good at geometry, so that's good. But what does this mean? If you're going to drive something, you need to make sure that everyone can embrace it. Okay, let's go back. Value engineering is about leadership. And leadership is about getting everyone to be able to participate. Not getting so deep at the very first moment that people get lost, that people don't know how to contribute. This is an all-in sport. This is something that every function, every person can contribute to. But we need to create that culture. Now, culture is something that's hard to create. You hear about a lot of people saying, I'm going to go create a culture. I don't know how to create a culture. Because a culture comes from inside. A culture is something you wake up and don't even have to think about because it's driving everything that you do. So how do you shape a culture, mold a culture, put new ideas into a culture? You make it easy to adopt. I am such a firm believer that culture is driven by easy adoption. It has high values, no pun intended, maybe pun intended. It has high values. it has good structure, it can lead forward in any type of situation, but most importantly, it's easy to adopt. So when you think about forming new function teams, when you think about doing new types of analysis, when you think about disruption, it has to be something that everyone can embrace. And by starting very simply, by starting with something that people can understand where they play, you can change. So let's talk about what this triangle means. When I think about any type of product, any type of service, any type of business model, I can think about it in 3 forms. The first is performance. How well does it behave in its environment? The second, of course, is around cost. What are we going to pay to get that type of performance? And then the third is something around market. And market can mean a number of things. It can mean a new regulatory environment. It can mean the industry types of competitors. It can be quality demands that the customers are doing. When you think about any product or service, think about boiling it down into 3 simple parameters: performance, cost, and whatever the applicable market metric is for your organization. Now, as a company, General Electric worked tremendously at that performance side. The most efficient equipment, the lowest emissions, the most powerful, the fastest, most energy efficient. We were on top of performance. But in many ways, we were lost on cost and we were lost on market. But then disruption started to happen. Changes, new players, new demands from our customers. And what became most important was that we were able to understand not only where we were in that triangle, but how to move around it with pinpoint accuracy and speed. So there's a time element to this, speed. That's where value engineering arrived. Being able to rally people, not around one type of metric, one type of industry, but in new types of processes, new types of databases, to be able to drive disruption. To be able to continue to be leaders in our markets, to be able to be working with our customers in new ways, to be able to enter adjacent markets faster, we needed to have this type of structure. We needed to think about value analysis and value engineering. This became the core of how we were going to be a disruptive industrial company. This is at the core of how we're emerging into the next generation digital industrial company. Being able to provide more types of services, more type of optimizations, more real-time feedback with our customers. We needed to embrace this tenet, and this tenet is centered around value engineering. It's around understanding where you are in a competitive landscape, customers, competitors, new types of technology. It's about really getting to the core of cost entitlement. Cost entitlement, as you all know, by function. And then being able to optimize the different drivers, because all of us work in areas that have different drivers that are going to change that triangle on the other side. Being able to do these value trade-offs, being able to bring together teams of multiple functions and focus around performance, cost, and market. Where are we? Where do we need to move to? Where do we need to move to in different markets? It changed a culture. It changed the way we brought together teams. It changed the way we thought about product structuring. It changed how we thought about disruption. Because of leadership. Leadership of our company, leadership of our people, leadership of every individual who embraced this. No matter what their function, no matter what their experience, if they embrace this, they could be a leader. Because what are leaders? Leaders are people that others want to follow. Leadership sometimes comes from in front, being able to set big goals, being able to make declarations, and sometimes leadership comes from behind, being there to support the team, being there to let them make those mistakes and learnings. And in value engineering, we found the perfect home for leadership and disruption. So we developed a framework. Again, we got everyone on board, but we need to give them structure. We are a lot of people in a lot of different geographies, working in a lot of different types of industries. We needed to give them some structure. People often say that the best innovation comes when you give people blank sheets of paper. I am not a believer in that. I am not a believer. In fact, if you go to a brainstorming session, we've all been to them where you get the pieces of paper that stick to the wall, Post-it stickies, and you're asked to write down ideas, my mind goes blank. I'm like looking at everyone else's sheet, what you're writing, how's that going? My mind doesn't work like that, and most people's minds don't. We're afraid of giving the answer, but we need to give the structure. And that's why, just going back to what we did 60 plus years ago and saying, let's give teams new types of tools and structures and expectations so they know where to go. They know what that end goal is. Just like when Larry Miles during the World War said, I don't have a supplier anymore, I have problems getting new materials, I need to think of different ways because people still expect performance, but I now am in a bind. He gave them structure, he gave them tools. We need to do the same every day, but let people make their way. If you become too prescriptive, people do shut down. But if you have no prescription, people don't know where to go. So we set this framework, started around the system. Everyone understand the system, understand what the targets are, where do we need to optimize, how do we need to optimize, what type of speed. Understand competitively where we were, and again, that doesn't only mean different companies, different industries, but very much so, new technologies, new ways of doing things, new disruption. Let's understand our costs. We were a great company in understanding what I call does cost. What are we paying? The question should be what is should cost, especially when you're looking at new technology. It's very, very hard to do this. So we had to give those tools, we had to give those frameworks, we had to model factories, we had to understand different trade-offs in materials. But we had to do it for this journey. And then finally, make sure that we were really engaging every player at every stage to do these trade-offs. And you can see that this is a circle because it doesn't stop. We do it again and again and again. Consistency, rhythm, being able to let everyone play, being able to let everyone be a leader. There are tools we can use at every stage. So this is about creation. Value engineering is about creation, it's about disruption, it's about thinking differently. It's not just taking an existing product, it could be developing a new product in a whole new way. And when you look at a value metric and you look at how the teams progress over time, they're gonna have ideas, they're gonna work them through, they're then gonna understand which one should we choose, and then say, well, how should we make it? What's some of the final? But we want them to start that over again. We always want teams to go into a create phase, no matter where they are. Now, you do have to get products out. You do have to be able to satisfy your customers. But as people are going through the different stages of development, have you given them the expectations, the tools, the ability to consistently learn? The ability to do that function analysis, the ability to understand how every part plays into the system and go into the next create curve, the next S curve. This isn't about ever being done. It's about being able to constantly learn. And value analysis, value engineering, Six Sigma, Lean, it's all giving us data, but it's just data. Value analysis gives us the ability to turn that data into information. And once it's information, it becomes knowledge. And once it's knowledge, it's going to drive the next phase of disruption. You need the systems, you need the tools to get that data. If you don't start with the data, it's game off. It's just an idea. But you need to keep driving it at every phase because it's so easy to say we've done our function trade-offs, we've built our conceptual designs, we're good. We'll wait till we're out of the factory, we'll get some more cost information, and then we'll go back and look. That's not the game. That's not leadership. That's not driving disruption. You need to make sure that you're engaging at every step of the process. Now, you can imagine the different steps as stage gates, toll gates, different organizations call them. It's not about just one stage. It's not about one tool. It's about understanding when you're just conceptualizing, when you're just able to put together all the ideas, to understand the disruptions, to understand the customer expectations, to do the types of analyses, to get the type of data that value engineering is based on. And then as you get to detailed design, being able to do your assessment in a different way. Now, I'm an engineer by training, worked as an engineer most of my career in General Electric. And it's so easy when you get to that middle stage. You've gone through so much in conceptual design around product structuring, arguing with marketing. I'm sure that never happens in any other company, but once in a while it does in ours. Being able to think about what does the industry need, how are we going to be the disruptor. Then when you get to that detailed design phase, just going through. You need that rigor. We work on products that are safety dependent, that are regulated. You have to have that rigor. But the value engineering framework gives us a different lens to look at when we're doing that review, when we're understanding that rigor, when we're understanding where we step. Because again, if you're thinking about innovation, entrepreneurship, disruption as your goal, it allows you to think differently. And then finally, as you get a product into production, are you collecting that data? Are you turning that data into information and then knowledge? So you can constantly assess how we're doing. You can constantly assess how good are our tools. You can constantly assess, do we understand how to do those trade-offs? Do we understand when we're doing functional analysis, all the parts that play? That is such a valuable place for learning. You can never ignore it. So every step of the process, there's engagement. When you also have this framework, it's not just for the engineering team. It's not just for the supply chain team. It's not just for the marketing team. Everyone has to stay engaged at every step, and that's hard to do sometimes. That's hard to do in a large company. It's hard to do when you get into launch. Different people will take different leads along the way. But you need to make sure that in this framework, you drive that engagement. So let's think about it as three main questions. I'm going to spend a little time on this first one. Does my product have the right features? Now, you've been talking about that for days. This is what you work on. This is what SAVE and Value Analysis Canada is based on. Do I understand that function analysis? But I got to tell you that most organizations work on averages. And I don't mean a mathematical average. But when you take a particular part, when you take a particular step in the process, we can always make ourselves look good. We can always say, yeah, I'm pretty good. Good, low variation, everything looks good. But do you really understand all the derivatives? Do you really understand in a system how all the pieces play together? And I'm sure most of you say, yep, that's what we do. But when you're doing function analysis, you have to have that level of depth like never before. I was in a session the other day with a team, and we were talking about a product. We've been working on it for years. We're ready to launch it. We have customers engaged. We're pretty sure about the value. And I started to ask simple questions about how we stacked up on raw material prices, on ability to service, and I started to get into every level of detail. Well, team, you've told me that the processes we're using are going to make us so differentiated. Why? Well, because we can make it faster. But does that matter? Do we use as much material? As we started to dig, as we started to really get into the derivatives, we still had work to do. But on average, we always look great. Because all of us talk about value. We have value for the customer. But unless you get to that true function analysis, unless you really understand what value is at that technical, definable, quantifiable level, you're not there. And when you have too many things in that quantity for value, you're not there. I don't know how to do a functional analysis if I'm looking at something that on average is called value, or on average contains too many things that I can confuse myself. You have to drive that type of rigor. You need to understand your derivatives and not just be good on average. And then once you have that, it opens up such freedom. It's hard. It's really hard. I was working with another team, and they were telling me how good it was, and the customer says they want the value. I said, well, what is value? And there were a lot of words they thrown around. Then they all scramble for a number of charts, and they put up a chart, and it had different metrics that the industry looks at. And they had done a nice job. They had put all their competitors down. And I said, well, it's looking like we're not maybe so good on this metric. And they said, oh, we think the competitor, that they didn't test it right. So I'm like, you're basing our product design on we think they're lying? What are you doing? What are you doing? I don't care. It's got to be about going in, understanding every part of your system, and most importantly, how they interact. When we get into value analysis, it's so easy to understand at that small component level. But this is about function. And there are very few one component parts that can give you the whole function. You have to start there, but you have to keep building. And when you have that, you can understand the cost. You can understand the trade-offs. You can understand whether you should make or buy. It's all about answering these three questions, but it starts with that in-depth knowledge. And then that mindset and that leadership to always be making trade-offs no matter where you are. And to understand all those interfaces at that intricate system. Now, value engineering is not just for an existing product. I see many people talk about taking an existing product and doing a new function analysis. And that's wonderful. It really lets you build into that square I call product growth to understand how can we bring that same value at a lower price to our customer, lower cost for our teams, to be able to perhaps change a feature and open up a new product. And that is wonderful. But it's also for disruption. It's also for identifying new types of products in new types of ways. Because it's that mindset. It's that leadership. It's about understanding what's out there in the industry today at the macro level and keep boiling it down to understand where there are disruptive opportunities. It's also about taking existing technology and putting it into a new market, going into a new type of model, going into a new area. Have you thought about value engineering that way? Have you thought about how your team works? How they can use their existing marketing tools and engineering tools and supply chain tools and put a value engineering framework around it to drive disruption, technical disruption, market disruption. It's not for one game. It's not for one team. It's a mindset. It's a culture. Our company used something we call Fastworks. Now, Fastworks is about getting more products into an industry in a new way, being able to understand and work with our customer base and try new things. All of us, again, work in industries where we want to make sure that when we introduce a product, that it's perfect, because you only get one product launch. But when you're trying to drive disruption, that's hard because you don't always understand what the customer needs. The customer doesn't always stand what they need. And so in an environment of disruption, we launched something called Fastworks. It's about, again, collecting data, going out, we make some leap of faith assumptions, as we call them, being able to say, the market will respond to this. Customers do want it. We pick some existing customers, some new customers to try that out. We set new types of assumptions, and then we go out there and we try it and we validate it. It's very, very hard for a company like ours to say, we're not going to put serial number 1 out first. We're going to put a prototype out to learn. And as you can see, value engineering is at the heart of it. It's about understanding all of the inputs about what functions do people want, what will they pay for, what is technology driving, how much does it cost, and getting it faster, earlier, and in more different forms than ever before. Fastworks is now how we work with our company, again, to be disruptive. And the two now can't be separated between Fastworks and value engineering because it's that learning environment, it's that data collection, and turning that data into information and knowledge. So we bring it all together with our teams. We bring it all together to say, this is the way our company works. It's a different view than that first circle that I showed you around system optimization, competitive assessment, cost, operations. Gets it down to the next level. And as you can see, we've worked in many new tools around Six Sigma and Lean, because that's what our core of our company is. You don't make something easy to adopt and build a culture if you throw away everything you had before. It has to build on top of it. It's not an optional this or that. They build on each other. They drive leadership. They drive disruption. So we are making it the way we work, again, at our company, because we want to be disruptive. We want to make our customers fulfilled. We want to make sure that our product cost is down. We can get price for the features that we have. We're using it across the spectrum, not just on an existing product, not just on something we need to lean out. It's for all spectrums. We make teams of teams. It's not about just training people. It's about holding workshops. It's about bringing them together. It's about learning. It's about getting all those derivatives together so we all understand. Using it at every phase of the process. If you're driving value engineering in your organization just by having a number of training courses, it's not gonna work. People will just say, there's another tool they're making me use. We want everyone on that team to be a leader. We want them to understand that function. It is that team of teams with a coach, with a goal, always learning, always iterating. But we need to give them the tools. We need to give them this framework. We need better databases. We've gone fully to model-based engineering so we can collaborate. Not just connect, but collaborate. Work on models together, be getting information on the factory floor, real time and feedback that allows us to understand producibility, yield, throughput. It's a whole mindset change for our company. And it's driving results. Those 8 businesses I showed at the beginning, we are at the top in many of the industries. And these are tough systems. Many types of engineering, many types of regulations, and it will change tomorrow. That's the one thing we know in this company. Something will disrupt us tomorrow. A new competitor with a great technology. We have great competitors in our industry. A new revelation in a university. A new regulation that drives up. We have to be ready to respond. And value engineering, value analysis on top of Fastworks, Six Sigma, Triz, being able to constantly think different, it is about leadership. It is about putting ourselves in for a new disruptive paradigm. Using value engineering as the core with all of our teams, all of our processes to both drive disruption, be able to react to disruption, and most of all, to always be a leader. Thank you.